From now on, we will study about the fifth sort of the adverb, that is the preposition. Let's study from the definition of the preposition. The definition of the word preposition reveals the position of the preposition in a clause, which is arranged ahead of an indicative word. Pre is that we will figure out the relationship between the preposition and the indicative word that comes the preposition. The indicative word is the object. To get the definition of the preposition, we will also find the subject to start the definition of the preposition as well. Let's study the role of the preposition. The reason why a preposition is classified as a sort of adverb is that the preposition makes the two clauses about the two objects in a clause that clarifies the relationship between each object. Without the preposition, two subjects will be described in each clause distinctively. But with the role of the preposition as an adverb, two clauses are merged into a clause to reveal the relationship between in a clause. The two subjects mediated by the preposition, the subject of the preposition and the object of the preposition. The preposition mediates the subject and the object relationship to convey the definition of the preposition from the subject to the object, like the transitivity of the transitive verb. The transitive verb conveys the definition of the transitive verb from the subject to the object. And the preposition also has the transitivity to convey the definition of the preposition from the subject to the object. Let's see how two clauses to deal with each are fused into a clause to deal with each subject as the subject of the preposition and the object of the preposition. There is a premise that we will imagine a building. Let's suppose that there is a building. Then let's study the first clause. A convenience store occupies the first floor. This clause deals with the subject, a convenience store. The first exemplary clause deals with the convenience store. That is the subject of the clause. Let's study the second clause. A restaurant occupies the second floor. This clause deals with the subject, a restaurant. The second exemplary clause deals with the restaurant. That is the subject of the clause. The two clauses deal with each subject, but do not deal with the relationship between each subject. The third clause deals with the relationship between each subject. The restaurant is on the convenience store. The speaker applies the preposition on to signify the locational relationship between the subject, the restaurant of the preposition, and the object, the convenience store of the preposition, that are the subject of the first and the second exemplary clauses. With the application of the preposition on, two clauses are fused into a clause to reveal the locational relationship between the subject and the object. We can also know that The intransitive verb is describes the subject, the restaurant, with the transitivity of the preposition on the described subject by the be verb to have a relationship, the preposition on, based on the fact that the two clauses are merged into a clause with the preposition on. It is obvious that the preposition practices the role of adverb. So the preposition is classified into a sort of adverb. The premise of the subject-object relationship mediated by the preposition is that the subject exists. The fact that the subject is stated in a clause means that the subject already exists. We checked the agreed premise for a clause. This premise is helpful when we figure out the relationship between the subject of the preposition and the object of the preposition, because the definition of the preposition is about the relationship between the subject and the object. With this premise, we are aware that the subject and the object exist ahead of the relationship before the speaker applies the preposition in a clause that an intransitive verb describes the subject to start and finish the experience, condition, or action. The intransitive verb describes the subject. The subject described by the intransitive verb does not convey the definition of the verb to an object. But with the application of the preposition, as we studied in this class, the preposition allows the subject to have a specific relationship with the object of the preposition. The speaker who has the extensive perspective about the experience, condition, or action described by the intransitive verb applies the preposition to describe the fact that the experience, condition, or action is conveyed to an object of the preposition. The speaker who wants to describe the only subject applies the intransitive verb, but the speaker who wants to the subject, the object. There is a clause. He sits. The speaker describes that the action indicated by the intransitive verb sit starts and finishes by the subject. This clause describes the only subject, he. The listeners who hear this clause think of the action. There is a green screen that the movie director uses to apply the computer graphic to a movie scene. Let's think of a man who sits, but we do not think of the chair or a place that he sits on. We just think of his action, just like this. Then this clause describes the only action of the subject, he. The speaker who wants to enlarge the perspective, the subject, he, the place where he sits, the speaker applies the preposition on. There is a clause. He sits on a sofa. Then let's think of the condition that there is a man in a green screen and he makes an action that is indicated by the intransitive verb sits. Additionally, we also think of a sofa that his action is conveyed on. This is the broadened perspective to describe. The speaker has the extensive perspective to state the subject, to actualize the action indicated by the intransitive verb sit, as well as the object to interact with the subject in a clause. The subject, who is already described by the intransitive verb, the interaction with an object from the application of the preposition on. The speaker applies the preposition on to describe that the action indicated by the intransitive verb sit of the subject is conveyed to the object of the preposition a sofa. Then we can also know that the subject of the intransitive verb sit, he, is also the subject of the preposition on.